So one of the most interesting things and exciting things about this conference in particular is that it's in Detroit, and we're talking about culture in a place that is so widely diverse and has so much culture. So much history has been here that we have started revolutions and gone through so much change in very, very short periods of time in Detroit. And there's so much opportunity, and we've always been a very opportunistic city. And here we're talking about opportunities in DevOps, especially around work, life, and play. So these things are all of what life is, and there's opportunities in DevOps for each portion here. Life being waking up every day and doing the things, keeping the lights on, making things happen, programming, keeping the servers up, all of it. Work being hitting deadlines and making those things happen, time to market, moving faster, innovating, and producing more things to keep growing and moving. And then lastly, play. The things that are fun, the things that are keeping us doing what we're doing, the things that interest us, and where opportunity lies with, kind of just everyday, the fun things, why we go to work, right? So this is something we talk about a lot, throwing it over the wall, but I want to make an important point because there's also this in the other way, because operations throws things at devs all the time that tosses a wrench into things. So we need to think about it on both ways. But that's all about culture and working together and understanding. There's a huge emphasis on empathy here, and that was really important. But working together and bringing down that divide, having a shared brain, think about things from all perspectives, because really in life, in work, and in play, it's all perception. So what you perceive makes you who you are and what you're doing. Keeping the lights on is something that we all have to do. So there's opportunity there around just building together, thinking about things in a different light, having those people around you to bounce ideas off of that don't exactly have that same mindset. You should really go talk to the people that have not solved your problem and ask them what they think of it, because that is a completely new perspective that can build things better, more efficiently, and it's just looking at it from a different light. So Carl, our good friend here, widely known as the guy who invented the automobile, right? It's great, but here in Detroit, it was revolutionized by taking another look at the process and changing that. I see Henry Ford as not somebody to be idolized, but he was a great thinker. He abstracted a process that was a problem to revolutionize the world. So this is the biggest problem in building cars, moving it, getting things to the right place, right? So taking a look at that from another light, this is an operational task that came at by a developer, somebody programming to make things work better, more efficiently. I've always been kind of a philosophy guru, right? And this came to me very young in life because I'm colorblind. I realized that nobody has the same perception. And it's a very interesting thing because when you look at things from a different light, everything changes, if you are able to. People say, walk a mile in my shoes. You cannot ever do that because you've never came from that background. So you need to intermix these teams, and not only putting operational people in your dev teams and vice versa, but you yourself have to think that way. You have to be the operations person thinking about how am I going to do this, and then back to your regular job. This is how we're going to do it. And kind of being DevOps, every single person needs to see both sides of the light, not only having people in their groups that are doing it for them.
Thanks. Now we have Clif from Duo.
Hi, I'm Clif's. I'm wait, oh, that's a different meeting. I'm oh no, you're killing me. Okay. Well, he just killed the punchline. So, this is actually how to. Hello. Hello. There we go. How to DevOps. I'm sure many of you are thinking, Clif, what is DevOps? Actually, I'm pretty sure none of you are thinking that right now, so let's get on a more interesting topic. And how to DevOps poorly. Now, the concepts have been inflated for maximum impact and for the safety of yourself and those around you. Please keep your hands, feet, and other objects inside the vehicle at all times. I'm blocking the Our first stop is teamwork. Now, you need a solid foundation to maintain peak DevOps performance. To achieve these peak results, I suggest the following, and it's kind of going to run course with the last, Fortified silos. What's not to love about a 9-foot concrete reinforced wall between you and the rest of the world? You're in your own element 100% of the time, and no one is going to reach you. Plus, you have the added benefit of knowing you're capable of bringing down entire companies with small scripts. I suggest the ThinkGeek Big Red Button, $12.99 to trigger said scripts. Added effect. Now, there are a few smaller issues you run into. I suggest just picking them up and lobbing them at other teams. It'll show those teams that you have initiative to reach out to them, and it will also let them see some of the things you deal with on a daily basis. Also kind of lessen your load. Or take the opposite approach, because really, why do anything? Which brings us to mentalities. Yes, this is the pinnacle no-ops. Mentalities, these are the kinds of people and thought processes you need to maintain a strong DevOps culture. A very solid DevOps culture. Up first, we have the Oracle. Not only are they the sole working knowledge of your corporation, not only can they answer all of your problems, not only can they solve any issue that comes up, but they make amazing cookies. True story. Up next, we have Bruce Wayne, senior engineer. He's a classy fellow, keeps to himself, has some anger issues, but gets his work done and doesn't really bother anyone by day. By night, he swoops in and he fixes everything. Not a problem unturned, no bug left unsolved, and no documentation left either. Which is okay. We can have a meeting for that. And in fact, if you add more people to the meeting, you end up with yet more meetings. And add more people to that, you end up with more meetings. And eventually end up with an infinite meeting where you're just hanging around and talking about whatever you want. Because really, why deal with things that we know already work, like documenting systems that are out there doing what they do? I mean, that's what the cloud's for, right? Just ship stuff off and it works. My next favorite section, best practices. These are these will get you to the fabled 101% uptime, or 25/8 availability, if you will. Our first topic here, horizontal tooling. Architecture grows horizontally these days. Why not tooling? Simply, as you're building things out, build up new scripts, new utilities for each individual node that pops up, and as you're scaling, you'll just build out the tooling along with it. And eventually you'll hit a few walls. Now, what better way to solve a problem than to wait until there's a fire? Because truthfully, the output you get under pressure is amazing. And lastly, as you all know, you can't really trust your users or your staff or anyone else, so just start cordoning things off. And in fact, just start taking away privileges to see who complains, because what you're doing is you're limiting attack vectors. And actually, please don't ever do any of this. If you see any of this, please do your best to try and stop it for your own sanity and the sanity of those around you. So, thanks.
Sterling.
It's a tough act to follow. So my name is Sterling Windmill. I'm an engineering manager at Duo Security, manage the ops team. Duo, we have a cloud-hosted two-factor and security platform. And my speech is titled Agility Without Fragility, or How I Learned to Temper Paranoia with Trust. So what is DevOps? I'm not going to actually go into that because I'd probably fail, and you all have a great sense now that you've accomplished listening to all the great talks here. But one of the things that doesn't always come to the forefront when we're talking about that is security. It's not necessarily top of mind in all conversations. And I'll give you some background sort of overview of network security over the years. We started out with perimeter-based security, where you kind of have this hard exterior outside, protecting your internal GUI center where all of your important stuff is. And over the years, we kind of moved to a different model for many reasons, which is a bit more distributed, a bit more complex. This is where things like defense in depth came into play, and that you have all these layers, lots of complexity, VPNs, WAFs, IDS, IPS. And those are all great things in and of themselves. But they mean that if you make a small change in one area, you can have a possibly cascading effect and cause problems elsewhere. And in some cases, complexity is the friend of your enemy. And having a model like this, while great for some reasons, can also open the doors to problems. So there's kind of a counterpoint where you want to just make security simple, right? That can mean a lot of things. I'm not going to get into that. But kind of thinking about security from the onset of a new project, right? When you're designing architecture, bake in security instead of thinking about it in terms of something that protects my existing asset that wasn't kind of designed with security in mind. And this is a new idea to me, may not be new to you guys, but the idea of rugged DevOps or rugged software development, which is definitely not new, but it resonates very strongly with me because it kind of, again, speaks to the idea of making sure security is at the table when you're designing things, because this is what we don't want, right? We don't want DevOps people running around doing whatever they want, making the organization agile, helping us get to the place we need to be, but security kind of there scooping it up after the fact. And this is not my image, obviously, but it's a good one. So we want to be agile. We want to develop great products. We want to help the business grow. We want to think about the customer and make sure that we're not putting impediments in place in our engineering organizations or elsewhere to cause that to stop. But as a security organization, we also have a need to make sure that our customers believe in what we do, both in our product and how we handle their data and our operational maturity. And so we had a desire to go through a SOC 2 audit. And it was very enlightening to me, not in that we had to change a bunch of our processes, but that the auditors wanted very specific things. So they specifically called out the idea that they wanted us to have sort of operations folks here and development folks over here, and not for a whole lot of cross between to exist. That doesn't really reflect how we do things today, and we didn't want to move to that model. So what tools did we use to kind of accomplish some of what the auditors wanted? And most of this we'd already been doing. It was kind of just looking at that and packaging it up such that the auditors could understand what it was that we were trying to achieve. So we leverage Amazon quite heavily today. You may or may not do so. Even if you don't, you can utilize some of these ideas in your own infrastructure. But Amazon, this is nothing to do with Duo. We happen to offer a two-factor solution, but Amazon provides MFA at a lot of different layers of what their stack provides to us in terms of services. And you can utilize that to protect access to Amazon via APIs or the console in a way that is pretty easy to achieve, especially since their documentation is giant and they're really good at doing what they do. So we use this almost everywhere we can. And they also have some services like AWS Config. They just enhanced as an offering that came out a little bit before reInvent this year, and that you can now have rules. So this keeps track of the state of all of your infrastructure in Amazon, and it will alert you when things kind of get out of spec in a way that you go ahead and define ahead of time. We also use tools like OSSec and AuditD on an operating system or per host level that tell us a lot about who's logging in and what they're doing. I know we all live in a post-SSH world, and none of you would ever consider SSHing into any of your instances. But when horrible things happen and you need to know what happened. And we kind of go with an approach that includes logging everything whenever possible. Because even if you don't need that data today, there's a chance that you may need it in the future. And if you don't have it, you can't draw correlations or make conclusions based upon something that you don't have insight into. So not to make it all about tools and technology, it's definitely about people at the core. This was also a strong part of what we had to kind of do as part of our audit, is make sure that we're doubling down on things that include the process and the people involved, and not just technology and throwing tools at issues. And so one of the things that I feel helped us a lot, not necessarily in passing the audit, but making sure that we're kind of keeping on top of this as we go, is having fire drills on a regular basis. So this might be an incident response fire drill. It might be an Amazon region is down fire drill. It might be a privileged employee's laptop is stolen from them. And And at the end of all this, we ended up passing our audit. We can now tell all of our customers that we are SOC 2 quote-unquote certified. And if you have any questions about how we did that, or what Duo offers, or even what it would be like to work alongside of us, let me know.
We can just go. Okay, so first of all, I'm really bad at naming things, and that I give things silly names when I start them, and they become the name forever, like this How to Train Yourself Dragon Style to Submit talks. This was actually a talk I started doing internally at Chef, and I gave it a silly name, and then apparently that became the name. Hey, I don't need this slide because I talked yesterday. So reminder, I work at Chef, I do a podcast, I have the silly license plate. But the point of this talk is to help you understand how you can be someone like me or Steve or anybody else or Jason or anybody who came up and gave all these great talks. So the first thing you need to know, don't be scared of stuff. And what you need to know is you don't have to write an entire talk before you submit it. A lot of times we feel like we have to think of all the ideas and we have to write out a talk. You can also use a talk to learn something. For example, let's say I have a theory about how I can build a pipeline to use Chef audit mode to test cookbooks all work nicely together. I don't have to know exactly how to do this to write an abstract. I can just come up with the idea and I'll submit the talk and I'll figure it out as I go. Remember, your abstract doesn't have to actually be proven out. The talk I gave yesterday is a great example of that. I submitted that talk to a bunch of places before I even knew that there were 5 love languages of DevOps or that my idea would work. So the question is, how do you come up with an idea for a talk anyway? We're not all big thought leaders, right? We're not all having great, insightful things, myself mostly included. So when I'm trying to think about what can I talk about, you know, this is the most important thing, is your own experience. It doesn't have to be a revolutionary idea. It can be something, think about this. Most of the talks this week have been very common, right? We joked about this. We're like, hey, they're all very similar in terms of idea, but we were all different people. Our experience mattered. Here's something else. You can give a talk about something that you learned recently that you found super interesting, right? You learned something new. Now, that may not be a new thing to the people you're going to possibly speak about, but your experience of learning that. This is the other one. I love doing this one. It's something that I actually want to learn about, something I don't know. The best way that I found, or a good way for me to learn something, is to say, hey, I'm going to go give a talk about that, because now I have to learn it. Where should you submit talks? Number one, forget about places like Velocity, right? You don't need to go to like the big thought leader conference, because first of all, you're competing with the likes of John Allspaw and John Willis and Damon, and all these people have big thoughts, right? Think about places. What's great is to give talks about places that maybe aren't familiar with DevOps at all, like local dev meetups, agile conferences, software testing organizations. You get the points. And if you go to bit.ly/techconf, I have a link there that does stuff. Hey, DevOps Days Ignites. These are great places to try out short talks, but they also are super challenging. This format is tough. It's also super fun. The other thing is to bear in mind is that DevOps Days sometimes are super picky about repeated content. Here's the other thing. This I say you don't have to pread it. This is a reference to a guy named Paul Reed who this year decided at every single talk he was going to write a new one. That's exhausting. The pros, age as humble, you write 1 or 2 talks for your whole year and you give it everywhere. Another thing you can do is try out your material, quote unquote, on the road. So it's really helpful and less intimidating to present at an out-of-town meetup where nobody knows you, right? This is super true. I love to go give talks like in Kansas City, nothing against Kansas City, but they don't know me. But in Chicago, I'm super scared. Also, buddy system, peer reviews, right? Like, talk to your coworkers, friends in the community. If you're really bold, throw your ideas out on Twitter and see what happens. That can work for or against you. This is the other one. Q&A is your friend. You may say, how the hell am I going to fill 45 minutes? Guess what? 15 minutes of Q&A. Super duper helpful. Leave that at the, the audience will appreciate it. You don't have to come up with content. This is one of my pro tips. Store all of your speaking stuff in a GitHub repo. So whatever talks and things you're doing, put it up in your GitHub and keep all your speaking stuff up there. It makes it easy for you to find it later, and it makes it easy for other people to find it. These are pro tips 1.1 to 1.3. Reason being it's Ignite. I had to consolidate slides. Make all of your presentation submodules. Put your bio text in a text file in GitHub, and put all of your proposals and abstracts there. Another thing, the reason putting your bio page up there, then you can just point organizers to it.
Bridget Cromhout gave me this idea. I started doing it. On your blog or website, create a speaker page where you list all of your upcoming talks you might be giving or things you've done in the past. So think about what are your goals for speaking. I want everybody to think about proposing for maybe a local meetup, proposing for DevOps Days Detroit next year. You have a whole year to think of ideas. Or maybe Chicago or Minneapolis or any of the other things that are going on next year. So thank you very much. Bye.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.